podcast, I talk about all things queer and bookish. Also, we've got a new setup, right? We've got a new location, I've got a mic arm thing. So we're going to try this out, see how this works, see what happens here. I'm hoping that this will be the new location, sitting in front of my bookshelves properly, and not just being like at my desk. I like the idea of it being something which is a little bit more cozy. So this is what we're going to work with. I might end up adjusting it over time and figuring out more location, kind of like just trying more things out. But this is the first attempt at having a new location. I just think it'll be quite good to have it be in like a set place, and I'm going to do this for my podcast and also just for my general YouTube videos where I talk about books and queer stuff in general. The topic of this video is not like a particularly light-hearted one, but I do think it's something which is really important to talk about, and I've been talking about things like this on my channel for a really long time, and that's because I have always been a fan of Becky Albertalli. I have always been a fan of Becky Albertalli. She is one of my favourite authors. I read Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda the year it came out, and it was amazing to me because it took me a really long time to find literature that was about queerness, and my first experience with that was the Mortal Instruments with Alec Lightwood and Magnus Bane, The Loves of My Life. And I was 17 when I first discovered the Shadowhunter Chronicles. There were only... The Mortal Instruments series wasn't finished yet, and I think there were 2 Infernal Devices. There might have been all the Infernal Devices. City of Heavenly Fire was definitely not out at that time. And I binged this series, blitzed through it, and obviously there was the storyline between Magnus and Alec. Now, at 17, you have some ideas of things in your own head and your own thoughts. But I was born in 1995. There was a significant lack of queer media and queer literature. And the stuff that was there, I was not exposed to. I was not, I'm now learning about stuff that came out when I was born and came out in the subsequent years, but I was never exposed to it. It wasn't ever anything which I knew existed. And I'd seen queer films before, not a lot of them, and ones that had sort of were a bit stereotypical, but the Mortal Instruments was the first time I had ever read not only a gay character, but a bisexual character as well. And then, so I read that when I was 17 the following year, so it was 2013, and I turned 18 that year. And that's also the year I started my YouTube channel and was talking a lot about books, so I was being exposed to other stuff. But then the next year in 2014, I was looking for books to take on holiday with me. I was going on holiday to Spain, and I found Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe by Benjamin Elias Sanz. And this book became my favourite book. If you guys are not new to me being on the internet, you will know my long history with Ari and Dante as a novel and kind of all the amazing opportunities that it's given me. And again, that was one of the first times I'd been exposed to a book that, because with Shadowhunters, a book with queer characters, but it wasn't a book about being queer. Whereas Ari and Dante was a book about being gay and their experiences with being gay. This was like, this blew my little mind, and I loved it. And there were things that Ari thinks and says in the book which were words that I had been struggling to articulate for years and years. So over the course of the next few years, there were other books that I was trying to get into, but there still was not, at this time, a huge market, especially in young adult literature, for queer stories. But it slowly started to pick up. There slowly started to be more, and it was really nice. And one of the books that I found when it came out was Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertalli, which I'm sure most people know about. Focuses on Simon Spear, who is gay but isn't out, and he gets a pen pal who we know, well, I say pen pal, they meet on the school's blog, but they're anonymous, so they don't know who each other is. And yeah, it's everything from there, and it is a lovely story, and I know that it has some criticisms, and I know that some of the criticisms are valid, but I still think is incredibly valuable and contributed so much to the current YA climate and YA publishing that I think that we can't ignore the amazing impact that it has. And the criticisms it has are not criticisms like to the extent of like J.K. Rowling level criticism. So like I think we're fine. We can acknowledge how amazing Simon was. And I think Becky has spoken about those criticisms and kind of addressed them and stuff. But this was amazing. This was a book as well that was happy, and it was like rom-commy, and you'd see like the ending happen in a straight book or a straight movie. So when it was greenlit to become a film, this was really exciting because this was something which just was not really happening. Queer YA was not being adapted. The Mortal Instruments film had come out before then, but that again, it wasn't about being queer. It was only the first one. It just had some queer characters in it, which was very important, but it was not the plot. Simon was one of the first big ones where this was the plot. This was the whole plot, was Simon dealing with his sexuality and meeting someone else. And that is incredibly valuable. However, the view on this drew attention to Becky Albertalli as an author, and so became the absolute hate train of everyone telling Becky Albertalli that she could not write a queer book because she herself was not queer, which then in turn forced, I would say, Becky Albertalli out of the closet and admitted that she was bisexual. Something which to this day she still says she feels really weird about. She still struggles with being accepted. She still struggles with the fact that she came out before she was ready to, because the spiel of hate that she received for not being a queer person forced her out of the closet. And her posts still to this day make me feel genuinely so upset for her, because no one should come out before they're ready to. It is not the responsibility of anyone else to decide when someone comes out, or how they came out, or what they can and can't do about that. At the start of Pride Month this year, Becky Albertalli posted a picture, there she is, and said, "Another Pride Month and I still haven't found my footing. It's weird how this community, in brackets my community, can feel so much like family sometimes, but sometimes it feels like you're the new kid walking into the middle school cafeteria. I know I'm not the only one grappling with that complexity. Let's be better at making space for each other, okay?" With 3 hearts that are the colour of the bi flag. That is because Becky came out before she was ready to, before everyone. Like, I think in her original post, she'd said that there were people in her real life that didn't even know at that point, and the internet forced us to come out. And I wish, with every fibre of my being, that I could say that that was the one and only time that that had happened, but it's not. It still happens, and I think we need to have a conversation about it. I completely understand the discussion around queer literature being written by queer people, right? I completely understand this, because queer voices are significantly marginalised within any form of media, and especially publishing. There are a lot of queer books now, but they are still not the majority. And if you look at the popular books that went popular on BookTok, a lot of them are straight books. A lot of them are heterosexual main pairings, and you know, that is the thing that sells more. You know, people don't necessarily always want to publish queer books because it, unfortunately, is not as marketable. It's a lot better now. It is so much better now. I have so many queer books on my shelf which are beautiful and wonderful, but you still see it. You still see complaints. You still see whenever Illumicrate announced that their Afterlight book, the romance book, subscription is a queer couple, there are so many comments complaining about it. Always. They are always there. It is always there. Because people don't want to read it. And the stuff they do read is the more easily digestible stuff. So as a society, we have shown that like gay men, out of all of the LGBTQ community, is more digestible for the general public. Obviously still not something which is widely accepted, but it is something that people watch a bit more. Things like Brokeback Mountain, even if you look at all the adaptations, Red, White and Royal Blue, Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda, it is queer men as the forefront. But if you look at the big mainstream adaptations, not many of them are sapphic. The popular queer books on BookTok are also those books, Red, White and Royal Blue, Adam Silvera books, etc., which obviously is really good that there are these books that are getting really, really popular, but it is still a very small minority of the popular books, and it is also still a very small minority of queer books that exist that are getting popular and going viral. And obviously we need more queer stories, we need more queer voices, and yes, I do think that it is important to have own voices books, and I also think it is important that we can highlight that, but only at the comfortableness of the person doing the creating. So if someone is cast in a film or cast in a TV show, because the internet also forced Kit Connor to come out. He was a child and he was forced to come out because the internet didn't believe, like, he first said, I don't want a label, and the internet were not happy with that, so forced him to come out, and he came out as bisexual, and he was a kid. He was like, just ridiculous. And I think we need to stop doing that. I think we need to stop jumping down each other's throats. Yes, we want more platforms for queer artists, whether they be authors, whether they be actors, writers, directors. We need own voices spaces. It's very important that we have own voices spaces, and it's very important that we highlight those. But again, only at the comfortableness of the people that are involved. No one owes you anything else. No one owes you their sexuality. If they are involved in a queer project, then I think we can say safely they clearly support the queer community, especially working with lots of people. People are doing it with the, like Heartstopper has such a amazing queer team behind it. We didn't need to know Kit Connor's sexuality. Like, it was being made by a queer team with good knowledge and adapting it well and working with loads of queer people to create something. Kit Connor's sexuality did not matter in that situation. It wasn't the point. The point was that there was this amazing queer story that was being greenlit on Netflix that probably wouldn't have been greenlit on Netflix if it was 20 years earlier. And that's really important. And the same goes with Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda. Yes, it has its criticisms, absolutely. But Love, Simon being as popular as it was, people like Jennifer Garner being in that movie and showcasing it to so many people, to renting out theatres so people could go and see this film, that is amazing. It did not matter what Becky Albertalli as the author's sexuality was. Didn't matter in the slightest. It was made with a queer team. It was directed by Greg Berlanti. It had some amazing messages in it. The book was really popular, had loads of people buying it and reading it, and it told a really good story that had a profound impact on everyone's lives. Becky Albertalli's sexuality in that situation didn't matter. We didn't need to know that. She didn't owe us that. It wasn't our place to demand it. Like I said, yes, we like own voices. We need more own voices. I think that is very important. But when you have a queer story that is being told well and is being told by someone who clearly cares and has clearly done their research and is a good story, the people's sexualities, that's fine. At the end of the day, a queer story is being told. A queer story is being put in the cinemas at a huge scale with loads of people watching it. Queer stories are being promoted worldwide. Queer stories are being showcased and highlighted, and book sales are going up. And that's so important. What we need is queer stories to be the norm. We need queer stories to become something which is mainstream. We need queer stories to become something which people are finding and are becoming something which people really want to see and are becoming the norm, if we then police who can and can't make them, then not many of them are going to exist anymore. And that's unfortunate, because we need to, you know, and yes, we do want to have more queer authors and more queer actors and more queer people involved, but if they're not comfortable saying their sexuality, that doesn't mean that then they're not allowed to also tell a story that's really important. And you know, Becky Albertalli has said that her stories helped her kind of figure things out, and you never know if that's the case with anyone else. You never know if it's safe for someone to come out. You know, you never know if it's safe for someone who is playing a queer role to actually say that they're queer in real life. You have no idea of anyone's actual circumstances, and forcing someone out of the closet is genuinely really dangerous, and something which is not okay. Like, that's not something which is a good thing. You know, no one owes you anything, no one owes you their sexuality, and it's not the place of anyone else to demand that. Obviously, I completely understand people, you know, and I would also be upset if there was a queer story being told and it was incredibly stereotypical, harmful, if there were tropes in it that were genuinely really not okay, that were stereotypical of the queer community, that had elements in it that could like perpetuate harmful stereotypes and could perpetuate like harmful ideals in people's heads of what the queer community is. Completely understand. In those instances, then there can be conversations to be had. Still doesn't mean we should force someone out of the closet, but I understand conversations being had within that situation, because obviously this is not something which has been done well. If you are a straight author and you're going to embark on telling a queer story, make sure you get sensitivity reads, make sure you get own voices reads, and you actually do research and properly understand things. That's really important. That's a really important element, and as long as those things are done and those things are covered, then absolutely that's okay, because you're still telling a accurate and important story. If you're then writing stuff which is harmful and stereotypical and paints a community that's not yours in a negative or specific light, which isn't true, then yeah, we need to be having a conversation about that, and that's something which we shouldn't be doing, and obviously I completely understand with that. But ultimately, whilst I think yes, we need more queer actors, we need more queer authors, we need that, having queer stories is also just as important. And if I had an author say, I'm straight but I wanted to tell this story, and that you could tell that it had been thoroughly researched, it was really important, really good, and had a good impact, to me that would still be considered really important and something which is really good. And Taylor Jenkins Reid has also had to come out recently, because she was getting criticism about writing sapphic stories in The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and her new book Atmosphere is also sapphic and was getting kind of a little bit of stick for that. So she came out as bi and said about exploring her sexuality. She didn't need to do that. Like, she really didn't. The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo is beautiful and is something which had a really good impact. I think what we need to do is remember that coming out is a different experience for every single individual queer person. It's not on you to force someone out of the closet. You do not know someone's situation. You do not know someone's experiences. You do not know someone else's brain. And yes, we can have the conversation of we do need more own voices stories. Completely agree. I wish every story could be an own voices story. I wish every story could be a out and proud own voices story. But that is actually not the reality, and that is not the reality of the world that we live in, unfortunately, and that is not the reality that some people will experience. So if they want to tell a story which is really important and really good, and they don't want to come out about it, that's fine. It is not up to them. Coming out, like, no one gets to decide when you come out other than you. And I think that sometimes the internet lacks nuance on that conversation and lacks nuance on that. If an author comes out and says, I'm straight, and then their book is full of stereotypes, yeah, we need to be having a conversation about that. Completely agree, because that's not okay. Don't be writing about something if you're going to do it in a way which is harmful. There are ways to still be able to tell a really important queer story that has a really good and profound impact without it being something which someone is outwardly, like, without it ending in someone being forced to come out. I think there is a nuanced conversation, and I think it is a conversation which a lot of people don't want to have. There are people who jump down the throats of people online if there is one thing that they slightly disagree with, and that makes me sad, because a lot of the stuff online, you know, there is a nuance to it, there is a wider conversation to be had, and we need to be having that conversation. You know, we need to understand the, like, intricacies of something. No one owes you their personal life, no one owes you their sexuality, no one owes you anything at all. Like I said, if they're doing damage, yes, we have a conversation. If they're being harmful, we have a conversation. But nothing that Becky Albertalli really did was harmful. Nothing about Simon, you know, was something which had a detrimental impact. It had an amazing impact. The internet is very quick to jump on people for things that they don't need to be jumping on people for. And it's a nuanced conversation. It's not a black and white conversation. I don't think it's a yes or no conversation. I don't think it's something when we say, no, they shouldn't be writing it, but I also don't think it's when I say, yes, they should be, because there's complexities to it. It's complicated. It matters on the story being told, how it's being told, the impact that it has, their attitudes towards it, the, like, popularity of it, the, like, longer impact of it, what they're saying about it, how people are taking it, did it offend people, did it upset people? There's so much to this conversation which I think is really important, and something which we need to be having before just jumping down someone's throats and saying, you need to tell us your sexuality, because that's not the way forward. That's not how we go about this. You know, that's not how we do this. There's so many other conversations to be had beforehand before we can get to that point. But even then, I don't think we should be outing anyone. But before we even get to the point of being like, oh, well, was it written by this person? I think we need to have that conversation. And like I said, it's nuanced. It's not black and white. But I think we need to be having that conversation rather than forcing people out of the closet. I'd love to know your guys' thoughts on this. I very much do believe no one should come out before they're ready. I also don't think it's a black and white situation. I think it's very nuanced and complicated. So let me know your thoughts in the comments as well. Thank you guys for listening to this episode of the Open Book Podcast. Like I said, my name is Ren, and I make videos across the internet about queer and bookish things and pop culture. So if you want to come and stick around with us, please feel free to do that. You can find all the ways to do that in the description of this episode, and the YouTube video version in the description box as well. I hope you guys are doing really, 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 really well, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.